The goal is to be authentic, true to your brand, speak when you have something to say, and make sure everything that you're putting out there represents your values.
If professional services marketing sometimes feels like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Educated Spaghetti, marketing ideas that stick, presented by Right Hat. On each episode, your host, brand strategist Lise Anne Schwartz, sits down with marketing pros and creative thinkers to untangle the marketing chaos. So pull up a chair at the Educated Spaghetti table and let's dig in.
Is public relations dead? It's a question we seem to ask every few years as change and technology keep disrupting an industry that was once known for press releases and personal connections. I'll explore that question with today's guest, Elizabeth Lampert. Elizabeth is the founder and president of Elizabeth Lampert PR, one of the leading public relations firms in the legal space. She's worked with many of the country's most profitable law firms and their clients, guiding them through change, crisis, and opportunity. In fact, PR News named Elizabeth one of its 15 most highly valued PR assets. Today, she joins me to talk about what effective public relations looks like in today's era of social media, AI, and do-it-yourself visibility. Elizabeth, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Lise Anne. It's wonderful to be here with you.
When you and I first met more than 15 years ago, we were working together on a marketing brochure for your previous firm, and it was titled PR is Dead, remember?
I do remember.
Well, the premise was that traditional approaches to public relations were becoming outdated and replaced by something new. And now we find ourselves again in a period of massive change that's affecting PR strategies in the professional services sector and beyond. So I recently pulled the old brochure out of the archives. Here it is.
Wow.
PR is Dead.
Wow.
And I thought we would take a little trip down memory lane to see how some of the themes we wrote about back then are showing up today. So are you up for this?
I am more than up for this. Let's do it.
Great. Okay, so let's start with the big question. Is PR dead? And if it is, what died?
You know, they've been saying PR is dead, I think, as long as I've been doing PR, right? PR has definitely changed. And funny enough, when we did that brochure, Lise Anne, that was the question that was being posed. And we find ourselves at another intersection where AI is now the new, is AI killing PR jobs, media changing? It's changing it. PR will never be dead and PR will never be replaced, but it is definitely changed.
So is it mostly AI that's causing it? Have there been other root causes?
You know, it's an evolution of things that have almost ramped its way up to culminate with AI to make the next big jump. We've been seeing the death of the press release for a very long time. We've been seeing the death of the way that PR professionals are presenting their news to the reporters and to newsrooms. We've also been seeing the death of the newsroom, right? So interesting enough, we're seeing, the consolidation of the industry. And as we go through this metamorphosis again, who knows what that's going to bring about, or what new jobs, what new opportunities for PR, but it is definitely migrated from the everyone can do this to now a much more strategic and focused and influential type medium.
What are you seeing as the replacement for traditional PR in terms of ways to generate the influential status that people want?
You know, a long time ago, people were very reluctant to provide an actual point of view. But when you and I started, this really was the start of marketing and public relations, very far from as we know it today. And then it was we are thrilled, we are excited to have X join. Now you need to give details. We are gaining, we are benefiting, we are bringing this person on for a purpose. Or leaders are speaking out on a cause, which they never would have done before. I mean, we're in unprecedented times, but now and also the generational shift that's coming in is demanding more from their spokespeople within the firm. So a lot of that plays into the PR aspect. And that AI can't touch, right? That's the human aspect of it. But AI is changing the way that people are performing or working through documents and creating analytics. So it's a fascinating time, I think, to be in public relations.
What's the goal today of public relations? Is it media mentions or is it something else?
I think the goal today is credibility, authority, and differentiation is is always top of the list of that. But I think that firms, when we started a long time when we talk about branding and positioning, I think that that has played a much more important role because we see more crisis, we see more things happening that communications, PR, and all of that goodwill and branding that you've put in for the last couple of years are reliant upon as things change and explode and things come at you that you didn't expect. I mean, we live in a very different world. And so communications professionals have to have different skills, and law firms need to be ready to tabletop and to explore scenarios that they never would have thought about. So, the goal is to be authentic, true to your brand, speak when you have something to say, and make sure everything that you're putting out there represents your values.
Well, it seems like with social media in particular, there are so many more places where people can look and comment on whether your actions actually do live up to the values that live very neatly in the About Us section of your website.
Well, and also, Lisanne, with all of those mediums and all of that exposure, it's also an opportunity for other people to define you other than yourselves, right? So now there's also reputation management. And if you're not doing your Google search and finding out what's being said about you on Reddit, on, the different blogs and how you post, if you post and allow comments and is someone mentioning, all of that comes into the communication skills. And PR professionals, I'll tell you, they are very different than when I started out, and good for us, right? We've evolved into very credible, very, much needed authorities in this field. I think that this, PR, especially for law firms, is so fluid that you have to be inquisitive, you have to be adaptable, you have to I mean, the people who don't, have AI skills right now, what are they thinking, right? To really go forward in this field and any field, but it's fun, it's fascinating, it plays to all the different characteristics of what a PR professional is and should be, inquisitive, creating images, representing. But it's interesting that we really did kind of address these things way back then in that brochure, right? I mean, we didn't know that we were doing that, but looking back with you as I did and talking about it now, these all were themes that were out there. We just didn't know how they were going to manifest.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So when we did the original brochure, one of our first themes was drill down, tunnel over. So what we were talking out about at the time was using vertical and horizontal marketing strategies to reach target audiences. But how does that fit in today with the goals of creating authority and getting out on different platforms and all of the things that people need to do?
I think it still does. And I'm not sure, you break this out into levels, right? And so let's just say for an attorney, not the management or, just an attorney in a practice, that would look like choose a specialty, plant a fag, and own the category, right? I mean, go all in. We have we have been writing bios for lawyers. And one of the questions that we have when we first go is, do you do this anymore? Did you ever do this? And what do you want to be doing? So, what's your specialty? What do you want to be found for? What do you want your clients to be hiring you for? And let's get into that. Let's dive in. Let's make you the authority on that and give me as a practitioner the opportunity to present you with your bio and with your credible sources as somebody who can speak on that. And if you want to be known for something else, well, then we need to build up your resume. And that's done through writing, that's done through podcasting, but know your area. You can't expect to be on a Lise Anne podcast and not be able to talk about the question she's going to ask you, right? You need to actually be an authority. And I think it's time for people to figure out who they want to be, and they are who they want to be, and own it, own that space. So we were not far off from that when we did that page a long time ago. But to be found on the internet or through the search engines or, AI right now, people are going there to look at the background or talking to tell me about Lise Anne. Is she a credible podcast person?
What do you do when someone else is, blocking the door to the niche where you want to be?
You get right in there and take them down. So that's, part of the strategy, not that rough and tumble, but that is one of the questions we will actually ask an attorney or we'll ask a firm. Identify for us who is your competitor. And if you can get as specific as you can, we can find out where they're speaking, what they're speaking on, who they're speaking to. And, listen, reporters go with the people that they know and that they like and they get along with and that are available to them. But we get you right in there with you. Let's bring you to the table. And it's really easy for us if somebody can identify those people or those publications or those reporters because they do want more than one source. And if you have the credibility and you're reliable and you have something to say, and we can present it and package you in a way that makes them say, yeah, I'm excited about this person, you have a really good chance of starting to go toe to toe. I think that it's a strategy that's long been used by PR practitioners. If they're not using it, they definitely should be. But I think that we all do that.
Looking at it from a firm-wide perspective as opposed to sort of individual attorneys, what do you tell firms that are trying to broaden their offerings and broaden their reputation, be known for more than what they've traditionally been known for? Is it risky for them to try and narrow their brand, as it were?
It's risky, but obscurity is riskier. So that I see us working more with management and the chairman and the messages and getting them opportunities to talk in a firm-wide matter. Those offerings are fewer and far between, but when they're available and the person of that authority is amenable, it's powerful. So we encourage it. I find that that's where we get more of the shying away and rightly so, because things can look at recent times. Things can come back and you don't want to put too much out there. And you also don't want to lay out your whole strategy for somebody else. But at the management level, if they're willing to get in there and define as a, firm brand and talk about it, I think it's a powerful opportunity, not only for that chairperson, but for the recruiting and for, everything that comes after that.
Let's move on to another one of our key messages from our old brochure. Differentiate or disappear. So what is this all about?
We're in a pretty saturated market. Everybody's doing business development, PR, websites. There was a time where all the websites look alike, and then it changed, and now all the websites look alike again. So it's very hard to know one firm from another. The argument is that people hire lawyers, not firms. Other people will say they hire firms, no doubt. They don't hire lawyers. So really, the opportunity is you need to figure out how to own a piece of this pie and not become obsolete. And yeah, I think we touched about this earlier. It's with taking a stand in these scenarios. It's a point of view. It's a bold tone. It's, saying things perhaps that other people won't say. We're moving away from that language of neutrality. And really, the people who are making a way or paving a way in the public relations, the communication field, are those who are willing to predict, those who are willing to say, this is the potential of what would happen, and say it strongly and fiercely. So I think law firms that do that, and we saw that around George Floyd. We saw that around a lot of the, social, the political, the issues that were happening. We really did see that from law firms. Gen Z is just demanding it. Clients are demanding it. So law firms that pick their battles and say their piece and own that piece, I think have, again, have a real opportunity to differentiate. And lawyers have, it's a little less so, but when they're able to be bold in their predictions and they're able to say things to reporters, they're going to be the ones who get the media coverage.
What do you think stops firms from doing this?
Well, obviously, not everybody within the firm has the same point of view, right? So, and not all clients have the same point of view, and there's conflicts. And so you could be talking out, commenting on Elon Musk one day and his, Tesla. And the next thing you know, the firm or somebody within the firm is doing a piece of that work. And so all hands off. So really, the larger firms have a process where nothing gets spoken or no PR opportunity gets past them without a conflict check. Smaller firms have a little bit easier. They know who their clients are off the bat. But in these larger firms, you don't know what's coming to play, that week, that day. So people have to be real careful about what they're saying and making sure that they're not offending anybody. And somebody is always going to be offended, but you also have to run it through the partner who bought the client. And so there's a process. And I think that stops people because it's just too much work. And they say, you know what, it's a hassle. Let's just stay away from it. But some of these big moments are or big PR opportunities for those who are willing to talk about it. If everybody else is conflicted and you're the little engine that could, and you're out there because you're one of the people that can speak, you can make a name for yourself rather quickly and become a resource and own something that maybe you didn't mean to, but you had, this time in this place and it fell into your lap and you took it and you ran with it.
Is differentiation harder for law firms than other types of firms in general, but even other types of professional services firms?
I think it's hard for everybody. I don't think it's harder. I think it's different. And honestly, at the end of the day, I think you have people who'd say law firms don't differentiate. And I think that's what our peers way back then, I mean, Berkey, Richard used to say it all the time. They can't, they don't, they won't. So it's a matter of nuance. And lawyers can. I'm not sure that firms truly can. Do you agree with that? What's your feeling on that?
I do agree that it's a matter of degrees. I think differentiation sometimes has to do with the relationship that you're building with your client or your prospect or your potential hire. And some of that can be set up with the way in which you present yourself. I think you can undercut yourself very easily if you're out there saying, we're a super innovative law firm and you have a website that hasn't been updated since, 2003. Um, I think you can hurt yourself if what you're putting out there is not consistent with what you're saying.
Right.
Um,
And I remember way back when everybody used to say, we're just like Brobeck. We're just like Wilson.
right.
And it's like, A, no, you're not. Good that you weren't Brobeck because they're no longer here. But, B, you're not. You're not in the Silicon Valley. You're not doing this kind of work. And so I think it's perplexing as well to the industry. So I agree with what you said. I think it's difficult though.
Well, really actually leads us into our next theme, which is once you've defined what you want to say and how you do want to stand out and what you want to be known for, how do you, as we put it back then, hyper inject your narrative into the market?
Hyper inject. Yeah, it's great and it's a well-known strategy. Again, I think everybody's using it. You saturate, you repeat, you storytell, you define who you want to be, and then you make sure that you're known for that by writing about it, blogging about it, talking about it, trying to bring in that business, having it in your bio. I mean, you just make it as well known as possible that this is what you do and do it.
So now there are so many more platforms and opportunities for people to do it, and ways that people are open to. We find people now are very open and eager to, for example, learn from videos. Social media wasn't there as actively. How do you define, a realistic strategy for somebody that wants to hyper inject?
I mean, it's a good idea if you want to hyper inject and you're, open to a strategy, which, it should be used lightly because you should also be able to move with the time because you might be in the middle of that strategy and then an opportunity opens for, something that you want to be able to pivot to. But I would really, plan out like a 30-day calendar or some kind of an organization. I'm going to blog on this day. I'm going to write this many times a week. I'm going to publish in this outlet. This is, here's where my clients are. This is what my clients are reading. I'm going to make sure that I'm in there at least twice a month, right? Because publications won't take you every day, but you have social media, be commenting to the reporters that are reporting on those areas that you want to be talking to, follow the companies. There's an abundance of opportunity for people to get in there and engage. And I know it's time consuming, but this is a differentiator, right? Taking the time. I remember, some of the best people of our time communicators, Ralph Baxter, for once, he took phone calls from everybody. He would talk to reporters all day long, and he would be a source that they would go to because they know that he would pick up the phone, he'd have an answer. He was knowledgeable because he followed the industry trends. So start engaging on social media, but you don't need to engage with everybody, right? Narrowcast your audience and then go in and just saturate where your clients read or who is somebody that you want to start a relationship with in the media, and then give them sound bites and tone and commentary that is different. So then they see you as a resource and they see you as someone who is actually following, and they might turn around and pick up the phone and call you for the next, comment, quote, or opportunity to weigh in on something. It's a great, strategizing is still the way to go, but nobody truly has the time or sticks with it. Is the reality.
Well, I think it comes more naturally to some people than others. Ralph Baxter, who you mentioned when he was at Oric, was certainly somebody with an open door or open phone policy who really thrived on it. But it can be hard for people who don't. What advice would you give to them?
Get PR training, get get some media training, because I feel like a lot of the people who don't and won't could and should, but they either don't know how, they don't know where to start. They say, "Oh, I don't want to look like an idiot." And so really, PR training can go a long way to teach you those skills. And it kind of goes back to the messaging. What's your message? What do you want to say? Having that in front of you when you're speaking. I mean, there's lots of tricks and trades, but I would actually say that media training and real good media training, right? So with the TV, with mock reporter, mock interviews, see how you appear on camera, see how you're speaking, what your tone sounds like, and all of that, and really go in. And if you're serious about it, spend some time perfecting your presentation and then get out there.
What's the role of your own channels, whether it's your LinkedIn bio or your website? How can maybe these are safer spaces if people want to start there? What's the role that they can play in a strategy?
We're lucky to have them, right? So for those people who have built their network and got onto LinkedIn, for instance, I think, time and time again, they prove that it's the number one site for business and for connecting. And there's a real opportunity for you to go and see who in your network that you want to, get business from, or reporters that you're following, see what they're saying, comment, engage with them. So that is very low risk. And like you were saying, for people who might not be ready to talk on a webinar or whatnot, that is something that they can do. The website, I think firms these days, except for maybe the blogging area, do a phenomenal job of presenting their news, their deals, their insights, or newsletters. The one thing that, really could alter a perception is when you go to the blog and they're outdated and they haven't blogged something from January 2023. And that's even worse if it's an emerging market or an AI or some kind of a trending topic. It's understandable if you have a Y2K blog and it hasn't been updated since shortly after Y2K. But if you have an AI blog, if you have an emerging, if you have a China, if you have venture capital and it's lacking, that says something about your commitment to that. So take it down. But yeah, the websites are really great opportunities. And I think that firms and the content that firms, their outside PR counsel, and their internal people are putting out are really wonderful.
Let's move on to another one of our themes. And this is one that I've heard you talk about. This is a newer theme, prove it or lose it. Tell me what you
Prove
mean
it or
by
lose
that.
it. You know, uh, Measurement is non negotiable. Um, especially, for PR firms, when you're working with a law firm or an outside firm, they want to know, what have you done? Um, what have you succeeded in? What have you actually moved the needle on, right? They don't want to pay for effort. And it's hard. It's really hard. So I remember back in the day, and even when it was being used and people were just, startled by it, I couldn't stand when they said, I got you 3 lines, which is the equivalent of $5 million in advertising, so yay. No, that's not how this works. It doesn't work in terms of dollar correlation, and people who are still using that just kill me. So, do a share of voice, right? Do a share of narrative, do a report, find out how you're faring in comparison to your competitors. Your real competitors, not Brobeck and Wilson. Who do you truly compete for? And that's different in different spaces, right? So let's do a share of voice. Find out, are you showing up? Are you publishing more articles? Are you quoted? Are your attorneys being used as authorities? Then, trust the momentum, because also if something happens, so there's a new California law that's being passed for venture capitalists. If you're the firm who's being quoted on that, the next 10 articles, because either other people don't know about it or you brought it to the table and you're writing about it and you've owned that spot, well, that is proving that you are doing your job. You've taken a trend and you've owned it. I also think when you get calls, right? One of the wonderful things that happens to us is we will write blogs, and the attorneys will write the blogs and will help with the topic and whatnot, and then have a reporter call and say, "I was on your site. I'm writing about this, and I saw that you wrote about it." And that happens with a lot of frequency if you're staying up to date on the topics, right? So if you're aware of the emerging trends, and your AI is moving so quickly, all the regulations, all the states, if you're staying up with that and you're putting that out there and you're educating your clients, the media is going to see that as well. So, really comes back to how you measure. So have some kind of a measurement that works for you so you can prove it, but it's not necessarily in the we put out 100 mentions, because if 80 of those are because you lost partners, that's not good either, right? But if 80 of those are citing your attorneys as authorities, or talking to your chairman for an industry trend, that's a win. And of course, if you get business out of it, that's prove it or lose it, and that's always the goal that we strive for.
How relevant is legacy media today, just in terms of your share of narrative, share of voice, and where you're showing up? It seems like everybody's wants to be on LinkedIn and posting on LinkedIn, and getting found that way, as opposed to maybe, and maybe I'm completely wrong about this, but how much do the the newsrooms that still exist still matter? How much do the broadcast channels matter as opposed to videos and other kinds of things?
Oh, they definitely matter. And in fact, at our agency, we have a small firm component. So one of our team members specializes in the firms that are really just doing traditional PR, and it might be because they don't have the budget or they don't have the technology, or they're just not interested, right? But there's a lot of firms that do traditional PR, and it's great. So they do newsjacking. They know that the Supreme Court is deciding next week on X, and they position that person as a source for it, and they let all the reporters know, as this decision comes down, Susie is available to comment, and then Susie gets quoted. They're also the ones who are writing peripherally. They're writing on topics, again, if they know that legislation or something is happening at the beginning of the year, great opportunities for traditional PR to write about what's the 2026 outlook in mergers and acquisitions. And at the end of the year, it's great for those firms that are engaging in more traditional PR to do, here's a culmination of what happened and here's what we see going into 2027. So traditional PR is not dead. Newsrooms, broadcasts, they're still out there. It's a matter of finding the ones that your clients are interested in or are finding you on, or taking those opportunities once you've been seen there and amplifying them through LinkedIn and through your website. So Any strategy at any level, shoestring or big budget, is still viable, and you can still make your mark with the right strategy and the right people who are talking about the right things. And that goes back to, what do your clients want to hear? Where are they reading? Where should you be seen? And own it.
I have to ask, what is newsjacking?
Newsjacking is, there's a story that comes out. So we saw something today about the Waldorf Hotel is for sale, and we think that we have real estate lawyers who might be able to comment on that because it's actually a big deal. So we go to our, you know, book of attorneys and say, this person actually has a practice that aligns with that. So we're going to make sure that every reporter that we believe who's going to write on this topic, or maybe it's a 4-day story, 5-day story, 3-week story, who's written on it before, and send them a note and say, as you continue writing on the sale of the Waldorf Hotel, Joe actually has experience in New York, da 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 da. So it's taking advantage of the news to insert your specialist. And that's where, communications and agencies become valuable because we're constantly reading. And if you're really enjoying your job, like I do, you're a walking cocktail conversation. You know all these little tidbits of what's happening. So newsjacking is taking advantage of the news of the day to position your attorney or the person that you're working with to be a third-party commentator on that.
We ended our old brochure with a simple imperative: get found. How does that hold up today?
Lise Anne, I think we started by saying PR. PR was not dead. Long live PR, right? It's just a kind of an evolution of PR. So PR, as we knew it, died, and then it rose and reinvented. And it's the same thing about getting found. Maybe those traditional ways are no longer, some of them are no longer in existence, or some of the people have gone on to find other ways and means to get their word out there. But there's so many opportunities, like you were saying, with social media, with websites, with LinkedIn, with webinar podcasts. Find out which one you can utilize and dominate and own and get found. It's as simple as participating.
So it sounds like PR didn't die. It evolved.
PR did not die, but let's have this conversation in another, 20 years, and we could talk about how this part of it may have died and it turned and it evolved into something else.
It's a date. We will do this again in 20 years. We'll podcast from our respective
I
space
will make
stations.
sure. Yes. I look forward to that.
To wrap up, Elizabeth, what is your secret sauce for success in today's version of PR?
It's a very exciting time to be a PR professional, as well as be as somebody who's participating in the communications and public relations areas of your firm. So if I had to, design my perfect client, or if I were to suggest to somebody who is wanting to do more, it's really to stay interested, stay up to date. So I think we try to tell people to, stay engaged, stay interested, work together to create your messages, own a space, don't get lost, and be findable.
If our listeners would like to learn more about the ideas that you've shared today, or get some training or hone some of their own skill sets,
Mm.
as we were talking about, are there any resources that you would recommend?
Well, you can find me on my website, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me through Google, and I'd be happy to answer quite a bit with that. But, there's also the Legal Marketing Association has an abundance of professionals, practitioners, articles, webinars, podcasts.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining me today, for your time and your insights, and just the fun of, looking at how things have changed since our PR is dead brochure.
It was wonderful, Lise Anne. I look forward to more, and definitely that date from the space station.
Absolutely. I'll be there.
That's today's serving of Educated Spaghetti. Thank you to Maddie Lingle for producing this episode and managing our social media, Charlene Fabi for our logo design and music, and you for listening. To comment on today's topic or suggest future episodes, visit righthat.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We hope you'll join us next time for more marketing ideas that stick.